The Bridgewater Triangle has been described as a beacon for misery, a place of supernatural magnetism where the earth is touched by death, destruction, and quite possibly even the devil himself. Located in southeast Massachusetts, specifically an area some 200 square miles in size, framed by the towns of Abington, Rehoboth, and Freetown, the land has long been associated with evil and the otherworldly. So much so that today, the triangle boasts a long list of paranormal phenomena, everything from haunted houses, poltergeists, and spectral hitchhikers, to time slips, UFOs and swamp lights, to thunderbirds, Bigfoot, demon dogs, and Pukwudgies, small troll-like creatures said to lure people to an untimely end. The land within the triangle is, in short, claimed to be cursed, with few able to explain the reasons why, or indeed how it may be possible to escape the Bridgewater Triangle's dark and inevitably destructive influence. My name is Laura, and you are watching The Paranormal Scholar. In 1975, the renowned researcher and arguably modern face of cryptozoology, Loren Coleman, moved from California to Cambridge, Massachusetts. Not long after relocating, he began to notice an unusually high concentration of strange reports coming from the southeast of the state, specifically centering in and around the three Bridgewaters, the towns of Bridgewater, East Bridgewater, and West Bridgewater. As he continued to gather reports of UFO sightings, cryptic creature encounters, and mysterious disappearances, Coleman began to realize that the area of strangeness was much larger than he had originally conceived, encompassing other towns, including Taunton, Raynham, and Dighton. The trio of Abington, Rehoboth, and Freetown, with its darkly reputed state forest, seemed to mark the borders of the bizarre territory. And so, when Coleman published his book Mysterious America in 1983, he, piggybacking the popularity of the infamous Bermuda Triangle, christened the area of weirdness the Bridgewater Triangle. Thus cemented in paranormal infamy, other researchers turned their eyes to the triangle, and so it was that by consulting regional archives and speaking with local people, an even deeper well of anomalous activity was uncovered. Stretching beyond Coleman's original limitations, other sorts of paranormal testimonies, including those of phantom hitchhikers, centuries-old curses, and even zombies, were linked to the original reports of UFOs and cryptids. This was not just a place for aliens and Bigfoot, it was, so it seemed, a place for everything unexplained. In the words of the Boston writer and Bridgewater Triangle specialist Christopher Balzano, it's a Pandora's box, with anything that you want to be in the triangle being in the triangle. Perhaps the most well-known area within the Bridgewater Triangle is Hockomock Swamp, the largest vegetated freshwater wetland in Massachusetts. At just under 17,000 acres in size, it is undoubtedly a vast natural area, being, according to the state's Department of Conservation and Recreation, home to at least 13 rare and endangered species. And, according to Fortean researchers, the densely wooded swamp might just conceal one more uncommon creature: Bigfoot. After all, during the 1970s and 1980s, there were, in the words of cryptozoologist Loren Coleman, all kinds of sightings of Bigfoot in the wetland, extending into several towns in the area, including Bridgewater itself, as well as Easton, Raynham, and Taunton. Parts of the swamp overlap residential areas, as well as major highways, meaning that some of the most compelling and consistent stories relating to the Bridgewater Triangle can be said to have come from this location. For example, an article from the Boston Magazine, dating to April 1980, describes how several townspeople reported encountering a tall, furry, man-like creature in the Elm Street, Bridge Street area of Raynham. Intriguingly, these sightings are said to have not merely come from different people, but also different times, suggesting that some manner of ape man was active in the area over an extended period. Another often cited incident dates to 1970, when a coalition of local police and state police supposedly attempted to track down a bear that had been causing panic in the Bridgewater area. However, according to Coleman, who alleged in a 2013 documentary interview to have spoken to some of the individuals involved in the hunt, the animal was no bear at all, but instead represented a classic Bigfoot case, with the disruptive animal said to have been very unusual, for example, able to walk upright as well as on all fours. Of course, one can very easily dismiss this as what it was originally alleged to have been, a bear, with the carnivorous mammals known to be able to stand on two legs. Black bears, for example, have experienced a population boom in the state of Massachusetts in recent decades, with them standing anywhere between 5 and 6 feet tall when upright, making them a likely candidate for many supposed Bigfoot sightings in the area. And yet, that said, it is intriguing how outdoorsmen, and thus the sorts of people one might expect to be very comfortable with wetland wildlife, have come forward alleging strange occurrences within the Hockomock Swamp. According to Chris Pittman, a Massachusetts-based paranormal investigator and amateur archaeologist familiar with the Bridgewater Triangle mythology, some of the best evidence of strangeness centers on those claims of uncomfortableness within the swamp, with even the most experienced hunters and trappers alleging to have felt the startling and unearthly feeling of being watched when out in the wetland. One such witness is said to have been a man called John Baker, who, like his father and grandfather before him, spent his nights out in the pitch black of the swamp, running trap lines for muskrat. One particular night in the early 1980s, when working from his canoe on a section of the Hockomock River just a mile or so from his West Bridgewater home, the experienced trapper realized something was following him. Interviewed by Boston Herald journalist Ed Hayward in April 1998, Baker supposedly knew whatever was following him wasn't a human because of how it smelt. Passing by him, it smelled like skunk, musty and dirty, like it lived in the dirt. He also claimed that it was big. Catching sight of it in the shadows, it was a man-beast, some manner of hair-covered giant, which strode over the thin crust of swamp ice only a few yards ahead of him. "My heart was up in my throat," Baker told the journalist who interviewed him. In all his years of working in the swamps, he had never seen anything like it, and could not offer an explanation as to what it had been, even all those years later. Another credible witness is said to have been a police officer who, whilst on patrol, was scared to death when the back of his car was lifted from the ground by a Bigfoot. Again, and particularly chilling, is a claim made by Carlston Wood, a Bridgewater resident who, as a child in 1970, entered the swamp with a group of friends. It was a winter's day, and the school children pushed into the wilderness exploring. When they were about a mile in, they, so Wood alleged, caught a glimpse of a huge, hairy man lurking in the overgrowth. Thoroughly frightened, the children screamed and ran, not stopping until they were back on the road and out of the wetland. A few years later, in 1978, another local, Joseph DeAndrade, claimed to have encountered a similarly described tall and shaggy-haired ape man walking in the woods near Broad Street in Bridgewater. He and a friend were close to a body of water known as Clay Banks Pond, a location slightly beyond the perimeter of the Hockomock Swamp, which itself has been connected to Bigfoot sightings. An amateur investigator interested in Native American Sasquatch mythology, DeAndrade claimed to have been searching for unusual, oversized footprints at the time, when he saw what appeared to be the Sasquatch creature of legend. According to his testimony, it had long, dark brown hair all over its body and walked slowly down a hill on the other side of the pond. By the time his friend turned to look, it had vanished. Perhaps the strangest detail of this story is that DeAndrade claimed to have been instructed by some manner of voice to turn around and catch sight of the creature. Speaking in a documentary film about his sighting, he was clear to state that he does not usually hear voices, but for whatever reason on this occasion he did, with the consequences being profound. Another Ape Man testimony again dates to the autumn of 1980, when two friends, Mark St. Louis and Peter Bloomberg, were paddling through the swamp on Lake Nipponicket. They reportedly spotted something strange on an island in the lake, a smallish orange orangutan-like creature on two legs. They beached their canoes so as to search for what they had seen, but were unable to find anything. All this considered, it is clear that the swamp has a rich reputation in regards to sightings of bipedal ape creatures, and such testimonies can be said to become all the more significant when one considers the name of the swamp, with Hockomock being related to the Algonquian word for devil or evil spirit, meaning the wilderness area at the heart of the Bridgewater Triangle is commonly referred to as the place where spirits dwell. Not only that, even beyond the confines of the primeval wetland, there have been reports of various other cryptid creatures. 2 years before DeAndrade's Ape Man sighting, in 1976, some manner of huge black hellhound was blamed for the vicious deaths of a pair of ponies. The black dog, so it is claimed, even evaded being shot at after weeks of panic. The area was thrown into such fear of the beast that school children had to be kept indoors during recess, and home and local business owners armed themselves in the case of an encounter. Eventually, the ominous black hound is said to have disappeared entirely, with it even posited that it left to another dimension. More recently, on the 14th of July 2009, a man and his girlfriend were driving along Route 140 just outside of Freetown when they saw what they described as a large brown hair-covered man standing up from a crouched position on the side of the two-lane highway. When they contacted police about the sighting, the department revealed that they had received several similar reports from other concerned citizens and were thus sending state troopers to investigate. Sensational reports of thunderbirds, giant black snakes, mystery cats, and even phantom panthers have also come from the Bridgewater Triangle over the past several decades. And the strangeness continues when one investigates the area's UFO sightings. Indeed, it can be argued that some of the Bridgewater Triangle's most famous incidents relate to the appearance of strange, quite possibly extraterrestrial lights and even craft in the night sky. In the 1970s, there was something of a flap in terms of UFO activity within the triangular region. Many reports of lights in the sky were made in the summer of 1978. Another spike in sightings came the following spring, with perhaps the most spectacular dating to the 23rd of March, when two WHDH radio news reporters, Jerry Lopes and Steve Sprazier, witnessed an unidentified flying object whilst driving close to the Raynham dog track. Described by Sprazier as a really bright light, it first appeared over the tree line. Getting closer and bigger, it eventually revealed itself to be in the shape of an arrow, or, as Lopes has described it, similar to a baseball home plate. As the strange craft passed overhead, the two men were utterly dumbfounded, unable to determine what it was. It had a series of lights on it, some manner of sparking cord hanging down from it, and was unmistakably massive. Perhaps the width of 5 747s wing to wing. Sensationally, it is said to have flown so close to the men that Lopes felt as though he would have been able to have thrown a rock at it. After hovering for a minute or two over a nearby field, the craft flew off and disappeared from sight. Over the next week or so, others in the area came forward claiming to have witnessed the same giant arrow-shaped object, and so the two men decided to share their testimonies as well. Decades later, they both stand by what they saw that night in March 1979 as something otherworldly. And this consistency of belief is all the more impressive when one considers Jerry Lopes' military background. An Air Force veteran who has been around a number of different planes, he knew that what he and his colleague were looking at that night was like nothing he had ever seen before. The craft was, so he expressed in a 2013 interview, not one of ours. And so, whose was it? Such is a question that many others within the triangular region have asked, including diners at a restaurant in Rehoboth. In 1973, they allegedly discovered 2 large, perfectly round circles imprinted in the dirt behind the building after the establishment suffered a power cut. It was subsequently claimed that a UFO, which had supposedly caused the strange circular markings in the dirt, had been responsible for the anomaly. And things coming from the sky can be said to have somewhat of a legacy in the Bridgewater Triangle. Eerily, some 30 years before, in 1942, a local newspaper reported that objects had descended from the sky down into the Freetown Forest on the 4th of November. Described as looking somewhat like parachutes, but without human forms associated with them, police were forced to search the woods after numerous locals came forward with identical testimonies. Nothing was found, with the army being forced to assure local communities that they were not involved in the incident in any way. Then, earlier still, in 1908, 2 undertakers, rather atmospherically driving a carriage on Halloween night, supposedly observed a strange lantern-like light in the sky over them. More recently, speaking of his own experiences in the Big Truth podcast, Bridgewater Triangle specialist Chris Pittman has detailed a possible alien abduction experienced by his girlfriend in 1999. Deeply interested in UFOs from a young age, a youthful Pittman had been a MUFON investigator at the time. That particular night, he had been following reports of UFOs in the Freetown area when a police officer advised him and his companions of a location in nearby Berkeley on the Taunton River. There had supposedly been multiple sightings of lights in the sky in that area, and so Pittman, his girlfriend, and his friend decided to camp out there and see if they could experience anything for themselves. That night, they allegedly saw many similarly peculiar lights and also heard a strange humming in the distance, which sounded like a generator. Then, the next morning, Pittman's girlfriend began acting oddly. According to his podcast testimony, her behavior completely changed after that night. Previously accepting of her boyfriend's UFO obsession, she could no longer tolerate images of alleged aliens and had to leave the bedroom door open at night so as to be able to sleep. Indeed, the topic of extraterrestrials now terrified her so much, Pittman was forced to get rid of all of his alien knickknacks and paraphernalia so as not to frighten her. Eventually, she opened up to him about why she was now so scared. Supposedly, that night, camping on the Taunton River, she had woken in the tent to the sound of the generator noise getting louder and louder. Not only that, her whole body had been vibrating. Chillingly, she had been paralyzed. Until she wasn't. Something happened that she could not remember. All that she knew was that she had woken the next morning terrified. Speaking in the podcast, Pittman explained the similarities between his girlfriend's experience and those of self-described alien abductees. The guilt of potentially having played a part in her having this horrific encounter, as well as many other odd and eerie personal experiences, ultimately led Pittman to cease his investigations of the Bridgewater Triangle and UFO phenomena more widely. And indeed, there is much within the Bridgewater Triangle that can lead investigators to abandon their research. In addition to unsettling reports of extraterrestrial and cryptid activity, there are also many ghostly stories, with some of the most well-known relating to the triangle's southern apex of Freetown, specifically the Freetown State Forest, a publicly owned forest covering some 5,000 acres and containing more than 50 miles of unpaved roads and hiking trails. Its remoteness, not to mention convenient distance from crime hotspots, has seen this area of wilderness linked to many incidents of crime and horrifically cult activity across the decades, with kidnappings, homicides, and even ritualistic acts of sacrifice by admitted Satanists all occurring within the forest. And so, before one even turns to the otherworldly, the forested area can be said to have obviously evil associations. What is more, according to researchers including Christopher Balzano and also the Massachusetts-based paranormal researcher and spooky South Coast radio host Tim Weisberg, the disproportionate amount of criminal activity in the forest may even be directly related to the wider otherworldly energy of the Bridgewater Triangle. Described by Weisberg as a darker place, the forest has, after all, long been associated with ghostly sightings and other paranormal phenomena, particularly of the sinister sort. According to one testimony relating to a rocky and scenic route called the Breakneck Trail, a spectral man was seen floating, moving like he was running but a few inches off the ground before dissipating before the witnesses' eyes. He was described as both shirtless and shoeless and possibly Native American. A mere 1.5 miles away, on an unpaved road close to the visitors' car park off Slab Bridge Road, a long-time resident of the area reported witnessing a similar apparition, another shirtless and shoeless Native American man. This time, in the snowy depths of winter, he once again disappeared to nothingness, with the witness being left in awe of the light blue aura that she had seen around him. Eerily, such a phantom light can be said to relate to a Native American myth which sees people who perish at the hands of the legendary hair-covered Pukwudgie return as orbs of light. According to the Wampanoag people, natives of southeastern Massachusetts who maintain a 227-acre section of the forest as a reservation, these creatures are small and yet viciously powerful, being similar in appearance to traditional European depictions of a gnarled forest imp, but with ashen or bluish-grey skin. For some unknown reason, Pukwudgies are claimed to have a stronger than usual connection to the Freetown State Forest. Not only that, the victims of this 2-foot-tall trollish creature, of which there are whispered to be many, are said to remain trapped under its control for eternity. By manifesting one of its enslaved soul lights, the Pukwudgie attempts to mesmerize new victims, unsuspecting hikers and trappers who, in the glow of the light, are enticed to walk into swamps, quicksand, and off cliff edges. In this way, indigenous populations, including the Wampanoag, are reported by local researchers to have a strained relationship with the Freetown State Forest. Despite using the reservation for annual ceremonies and important meetings, locals have come forward admitting to feeling the heavy presence of spirits in the forest. One, a local teen described in Christopher Balzano's 2008 book on the area and its legends, even went so far as to say that the forest possesses such an eerie atmosphere that you just want to turn around and get out. It is not a place that the teenager felt comfortable being, an opinion which, it is suggested, is shared by many others. For certainly, the soul lights of the Pukwudgie are but one of many types of phenomena reported in the forest. Disembodied voices are frequently referenced, as are feelings of being watched and or those of utter dread. Perhaps the most disturbing feeling to have been reported from within the forest, however, is the one commonly associated with Asonet Ledge. An 80-foot-high, sheer granite face which drops down into a body of water, the ledge has a long and tragic history, being connected with innumerable instances of people taking their own lives. During the 17th century, several Native American warriors supposedly leapt from it rather than die at the hands of the Puritan enemy. Later, a young woman, forbidden to be with her lover, chose the ledge rather than a life without love. Then, in recent decades, there have been multiple stories of people either falling or choosing to jump from the forested cliff edge. And chillingly, it is even reported by those who have hiked to the nature spot that it is common to be gripped by a sudden urge to jump once one walks out onto the ledge. Those able to resist have gone on to tell stories of sighting a spectral lady in white, presumably the doomed lover, and phantom warriors tossing themselves from the rocky edge, seemingly enticing them to do the same. Sinisterly, it is even whispered that the Pukwudgie uses the ledge as a hunting ground, with there being rare instances of visitors claiming to have suffered physical attacks at the site. In addition to the deadly atmosphere of the ledge, the Freetown State Forest is said to guard other sinister secrets, including shadow figures, robe-wearing witches, and even, according to retired Detective Sergeant Alan Elvis, an underground bunker stuffed with creepy dolls. And so, without even examining the full extent of the forest's Fortean reputation, one very easily gets the sense that this, like the wider triangular region, is a highly paranormally active location. And such a statement becomes all the more interesting when one considers the opinion of Aaron Kaju, the co-creator of a 2013 documentary on the Bridgewater Triangle. A self-described skeptic who, despite giving fair coverage to the Triangle's paranormal phenomena in his film, has more of an interest in the history and true crime elements of the region. He stated during an interview that the Bridgewater Triangle does not necessarily have any more paranormal activity than any other 200-mile area would if it were put under the same level of scrutiny. The Freetown State Forest, however, was something of a magnet for darkness, particularly of the criminal kind. Considering the seemingly endless list of not just illegal activity, but crimes of the worst and most horrific sort relating to the 5,000-acre area, this is difficult to dispute. In attempting to address why this might be so, researchers including Christopher Balzano have postulated that negative energy might be able to trigger not merely negative hauntings and monster encounters, but all manner of negative human activity as well. In the case of the Freetown State Forest, might a killer thus, so Balzano writes, be compelled to kill, not by passion or revenge, but by some unseen force at the location. Similarly, it can be said that a criminal might be drawn and thus travel to the forest so as to enact and conceal their dark deeds. In his 2008 book, Dark Woods, Balzano even initiates a discussion regarding the many asylums and mental health facilities located within the Triangle's borders. Is there something about this area which has triggered a mental health crisis? One which, tragically, has led to a higher than usual rate of slaughter, both self and third-party inflicted. Following this line of thinking, Balzano additionally suggests that it might be useful to consider extending the traditional boundaries of the Bridgewater Triangle, so as to include nearby locations such as the Lizzie Borden house, the infamous property associated with the brutal murders and subsequent hauntings of Abby and Andrew Borden. Located in Fall River, a mere 13-mile drive from the Bridgewater Triangle's most southerly apex of Freetown, it has been proposed that the negative energy of the Triangle may have played a part in the bloody, historic happenings at the house. Speaking in support of this, the popular paranormal author Jeff Ballinger has said that far from being a random location on a map, the Triangle bleeds out. It is, so he claims, a living, breathing thing that has a hunger. And yet, when trying to pinpoint a precise reason as to why a 200-odd square mile region of Massachusetts might be so paranormally afflicted, researchers have stumbled. The traditional origin story is the King Philip's War, so called because of the involvement of a Wampanoag chief who adopted the anglicized name Philip due to friendly relations between his father and the Mayflower Pilgrims. It has been referred to as the bloodiest armed conflict per capita in American history. From 1675 to its eventual conclusion on the 12th of April 1678, the fighting claimed the lives of many, with numerous raids, sieges, battles and skirmishes resulting in more than half of all New England towns being attacked by native warriors, with many completely destroyed. Some, in Massachusetts in particular, were not resettled until 70 years after the war. Many atrocities were recorded, with women and children said to have been targeted by New England colonists and their indigenous allies. According to one especially gruesome report, an English captain called Samuel Mosley, employing Dutch pirates he had captured off the coast, used dogs to track and hunt down Native Americans, once even allowing them to devour a woman he had captured for interrogation. Many believe that the bloodshed of this conflict was the thing to curse the land, with the legacy of suffering being so strong that it has permeated time to reach the present day. Even then, without minimizing the indisputable horror of the King Philip's War, it can be said to be somewhat of a trope to rely on the cursed Native American land explanation. After all, armed conflict is nothing new. If such can trigger a curse, then the entire Earth ought to be as sensationally, paranormally active as the Bridgewater Triangle. Not only that, it seems that the area's association with death and tragedy predates the 1670s war. Certainly, between 1614 and 1620, the Wampanoag people suffered a dramatic decline in population, from 12,000 to 2,000 after disease ripped through their settlements. Might this tremendous loss of life have somehow scarred the land? Even then, there are suggestions of an even older origin, with Loren Coleman in his legend spiraling Mysterious America making reference to the discovery of an 8,000-year-old burial ground within the Hockomock Swamp. Situated on Grassy Island, when archaeologists, so he tells us, opened the graves, the red ochre within the tombs allegedly bubbled and dissolved mysteriously, and every photograph taken of the site failed to develop. And so, was this a manifestation of an ancient curse relating to the Bridgewater Triangle? It is intriguing here to remember the etymological significance of the Massachusetts swamp, with Hockomock being the Algonquin word for devil, or, as Hokomoko, evil spirit. In this way, grappling with the potential of such an ancient origin for the sinister supernatural magnetism of the Bridgewater Triangle can lead one down the path of all manner of explanations, from magnetic anomalies to ley lines to the presence of spiritually energetic water sources. Perhaps one of the most interesting concepts to consider here is that of thin places. Also referred to as window areas, many investigators of the anomalous and bizarre have proposed that some locations on Earth are simply more liable to paranormal activity than others, with the suggestion being that the veil between our material world and whatever else there may be is thinner than in other places. Said to be areas of energy, such locations are hypothesized to be so close to the other world that travel between the two is not only possible, but easy. Such a concept would allow for all manner of paranormal phenomena, from the blurring of time as might be experienced in a time slip, to encounters with beings who have bled through from the other side. In simple terms, this might be a spirit of the dead who, having passed from earth to heaven, is able to return and be seen by the living, as has been reported in locations including the Freetown State Forest. More complex suppositions would suggest that interdimensional beings, not of human origin, are able to use thin places so as to interfere in human affairs. One to have spoken of such a concept is ex-MUFON investigator Chris Pittman. Describing the Bridgewater Triangle as a hotbed of paranormal activity, especially of the sinister variety, he has suggested that all of the varied reports to have come from the area actually represent the same thing. Far from there being UFOs and Bigfoots and ghosts and demon dogs and Pukwudgies within the Bridgewater Triangle, there is, he has offered, just one type of entity at work. Some manner of non-human intelligence whose origin, far from being the reaches of outer space, is Earth. Deceptive and controlling, such a being would appear in different guises, depending upon when and to whom it was appearing. For example, historically, angels or fairies, or indeed some type of Native American mythical creature like the Pukwudgie, might be more easily integrated into the human experience. Today, in our postmodern scientific age, this is much more likely to be an extraterrestrial UFO. Discussing Bigfoot sightings in particular, Pittman has stressed that, biologically, it simply does not make sense for these things to be real creatures. There is, so he has explained, not enough food or area in the wintertime for the Bridgewater Triangle to support a breeding population of hairy hominid creatures. And so the suggestion is that either witnesses are lying or that the beings they have encountered are not biological. The pony savaging hellhound of 1976 might also make more sense when considered in this manner, especially as it was suggested at the time that its eventual disappearance was it simply slinking away back to the other dimension from which it had come. In short, it was a trans-dimensional monster. Such is undoubtedly an unsettling thought, one that becomes all the more so when one reconsiders the details of Joseph DeAndre's 1978 Bigfoot sighting. Standing at Bridgewater's Claybanks Pond, he claims that a voice told him to turn around at the very moment that allowed him to see the unidentified creature walking through the trees on the opposite side of the water. In the decades since, DeAndre has, in no uncertain terms, stated that something wanted him to see it. Given that he was out in the wilderness looking for evidence of Sasquatch, this is especially significant. How would what is objectively claimed to be an oversized ape be able to push a thought into someone's mind? Similar to this are Chris Pittman's own experiences in regards to UFOs and so-called extraterrestrials within the Triangle. Speaking at length about all that he experienced as a young investigator, he has suggested in an eerily sober and well-expressed manner that he was in some sort of mental communication with the craft and beings he was investigating. The same as DeAndre, details of his testimony suggest that the entities in question wanted to be investigated, and more than that, wished to reveal themselves to Pittman. One night, so he has explained in a podcast interview, he heard something moving in another room of his apartment, whilst trying to sleep after sighting 2 separate UFOs that evening. Something then seemed to tell him that, if he wanted to validate his experiences, all he needed to do was get up and go look in the other room. All that he needed to see, so he expressed during his interview, would have been there. Terrified, and feeling as though a line from which he could not return was about to be crossed, Pittman stayed in bed. That was the moment he ceased his research. And so it is that when one truly begins to dig into the phenomena associated with the Bridgewater Triangle, one starts to realize just how strange it all is. Undoubtedly, there are many stories, far more than can ever be expressed in one go, and yet they are far from standalone cases. Instead, they appear, oddly and somehow, as single pages of a great book, a book which tells the story of a mysterious and quite possibly malevolent other side, from which some manner of non-human intelligence might be bleeding through. The Bridgewater Triangle might in this way represent a paranormal vortex, a thin place or window akin to the great Ivan T. Sanderson's vile vortices, places on Earth where a rift in the landscape has occurred, causing time and space to fold in upon themselves, and allow those entities with the power to do so to come through, interact, and maybe even manipulate us, in whatever strange and sinister way they see fit. Thank you so much for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do consider liking and subscribing, being sure to click the bell icon for more of the paranormal. Doing so hugely helps to support my channel. Equally, you might also like to visit my new second channel for some of my more personal explorations into the bizarre and bewildering. Thank you again. Until next time.